Corals are important environmental subjects as they bring a lot of benefits to the environment. They form the ecosystem's infrastructure and can be considered its architect, builder, and even their engineer. On top of that, they offer protection and shelter to other creatures and organisms, which would lead to an overall expansion of biodiversity in the aquatic environment. Symbiodiniaceae is a dinoflagellate algae that plays an important role in the upkeep of coral reef ecosystem. These microorganisms provide a source of carbon as they have the ability to photosynthesize, and this can help the corals, especially the ones at the surface of the water. Symbiotic relationship with Symbiodiniaceae helps them thrive in the ocean where there is a general lack of nutrients, as there are areas present in the ocean that can be considered oligotrophic environments. If the symbiont fails, it could have detrimental effects on the corals as they will slowly cease to function properly, and this can lead to death, which may cause damage to the reef system as well as a possible ecosystem collapse. While there is still a lot that we don't know about their symbiotic relationship, scientists, through their research, have seen that Symbiodiniaceae helps increase thermal tolerance. This can help prevent coral death and degradation. This can be known as the adaptive bleaching hypothesis, which theorizes the possibility of an increased thermal resistance if they are in symbiosis with a heat-tolerant Symbiodiniaceae. This can occur through an adjustment of the corals that are in extreme environments, as they can develop certain anatomical changes as a result of their association with Symbiodiniaceae.
The taxonomic rank of Symbiodiniaceae is located at the family level, and it belongs to the order Sicelles, class Dinophysiae, phylum Dinoflagellates, kingdom Chromista, and the domain Eukarya. In addition, there were 7 genera under Symbiodiniaceae, which is the Symbiodinium, Breviolum, Cladocopium, Durosdinium, Ephraenium, Fugacium, and Geracladium. As Symbiodiniaceae was a family, so there were differences in terms of morphology, physiology such as photosynthetic abilities, genetics, etc. Symbiodiniaceae were brownish-colored, unicellular photosynthetic eukaryotes. Most Symbiodiniaceae has a cocci or spherical shape and having mean cell sizes ranging from 6 micrometer to 12 micrometer based on their length and width. Their cell nucleus contains approximately 78 to 98 highly condensed chromosomes, but the DNA strands does not associate with the histone proteins. They arrange well-organized, orientated blocks of genes in rod-shaped chromosomes rather than distributing the genes randomly across chromosomes like humans. Then, their cell wall components include mesh of cellulose, glycoproteins, and polysaccharides. Some Symbiodiniaceae cells have long striped chloroplasts surrounding the outer layer of cytoplasm, but some have short and discontinuous chloroplasts. Symbiodiniaceae is a photosynthetic microalga that forms a symbiotic relationship with coral reefs. The algae under family Symbiodiniaceae undergo photosynthesis to convert light energy into chemical energy stored in molecules such as carbohydrates, amino acids, and lipids. These were photosynthetic products that would be transferred to the host such as coral reef. It can undergo sexual reproduction as it contains meiotic genes and genes related for gamete formation. Besides that, Symbiodiniaceae has an optimal photosynthetic performance between temperature 20 to 26 degrees Celsius. Their communities change significantly with varying sea depth. As mentioned earlier, Symbiodiniaceae transfers photosynthetic products to the host as energy requirements. Thus, Symbiodiniaceae act as the support for the entire coral reef ecosystem, as the coral-algae symbiosis represents the trophic and structural basis of coral reef ecosystem. As an example, during the Middle Jurassic period, there was a rapid increase in number of species of calcifying corals, and reef growth coincides with Symbiodiniaceae. Thus, it shows that the evolution of Symbiodiniaceae aligns with the growth of reef-building corals and produces large environmental effects to the coral reef ecosystem and to the Earth.
The phylum Cnidaria includes such diverse forms such as jellyfish, hydra, sea anemones, and corals. Cnidarian hosts rely on the sugar product from photosynthesis to survive. Coral endosymbionts provide the majority of the energy required by reef-building corals through photosynthesis, allowing calcium carbonate accumulation and growth. When disassociated from these symbionts, corals experience bleaching, which is when the coral turns white, and face decreased functionality and greater motility, which can result in systematic reef degradation and potential ecosystem collapse. Algae from the family Symbiodiniaceae use photosynthesis to convert light energy into chemical energy stored in the form of carbohydrates, lipids, and amino acids. These photosynthetic products can be transferred to the hosts that harbor Symbiodiniaceae, providing up to 100% of the energy requirements of some cnidarians. The algae utilizes a unique adaptation to lower light conditions by shifting their light harvesting to a photosystem II based system, where photosystem II is structured near to the photosystem I, with additional peridinian chlorophyll A protein-soluble antenna also trapping light that is funneled to the photosystem I reaction center. Despite the importance of photosynthesis in Cnidarian-algal symbiosis, there has not been a systematic evaluation of the impact of photosynthesis on the different stages of symbiosis establishment. Much of the data available on this topic are difficult to interpret because there are often confounding variables associated with the experiments, and an evaluation of the effect of photosynthesis on symbiosis was not typically the primary focus of the research.
Okay, so for the interaction between hard coral and Symbiodiniaceae, they actually have a mutualistic relationship, meaning that they both get benefits from each other. So from the previous slides, we talked about the role of Symbiodiniaceae in coral reef. Indeed, coral also contributes something to this microalgae, which is the Symbiodiniaceae. It provides protection and or shelter to them so that they can live within the host. They will not be vulnerable to herbivores or other organisms. So coral also provides compounds such as nitrogen, sulfur, and phosphorus. These nutrients are needed for microalgae to carry out photosynthesis. In this slide, I'm going to talk about Cnidarian-algal symbiosis. So this symbiosis involves Cnidarian species, which is the host cells, and algal cells. So these three stages include how both cells interact with each other, they may exchange nutrients, and the number of algal cells will increase. So the first step is infection, second step is proliferation, and third step is maintenance. So as you can see here, the first step infection, proliferation, and maintenance. So the first step comes to recognition, which is like these both cells will first recognize each other and go with an initial contact, and the host cells will engulf the algal cells by phagocytosis. Another step is the sorting. They will start to sort the non-photosynthetic objects such as like food particles out of the cells. And the second step is proliferation, which is like the number of algal cells will increase in this step. So algae will proliferate through cell division within host tissue. So the rate of increasing these algal cells actually depend on the photosynthesis. Third step, which is the final step, which is the maintenance, it occurs only when the algal population reaches to a steady state. These two diagrams show the steps of Cnidarian Symbiodiniaceae symbiosis. So for these three steps, which is infection, proliferation, and maintenance, proliferation and maintenance can only happen in the presence of photosynthesis. So rate of photosynthesis is actually very important. These two stages depend on the rate of photosynthesis. So you can see this diagram, they will first contact with each other first for the symbiont and host cells, followed by engulfment. The host cell will engulf the symbiont cell, and then after that sorting, they will start to sort the non-photosynthetic object out, and after that they will start to the algal cells will start to proliferate through cell division, and the final they will reach a dynamic stability. Yeah, that's all from me.
Now, coral reefs themselves are really important for three main reasons. First of all, they provide a vital ecosystem for over 25% of marine life. Now, 25% may not seem much, but this is taking into account microbes, the microorganisms, the large organisms that all rely on the ecosystem that the coral reefs provide. And these coral reefs provide shelter, nutrients, and a food chain and a food hierarchy for all these different organisms. Next reason is that coral reefs are a good combatant against climate change. Now, climate change is a very rising issue, including ocean acidification, that may cause coral reefs to die off. And now, coral reefs are really important in this aspect because coral reefs act as a natural barrier against rising sea levels and to prevent flooding in coastal cities and act as a natural carbon sink. Now, how does it act as a natural carbon sink? It's because coral reefs themselves, or corals themselves, individual corals, they have a carbon exoskeleton that relies on drawing carbon dioxide gas that has been diffused into the water to continue manufacturing and maintaining their carbon exoskeleton. So that's why they're very important for climate change. Finally, they're really useful in research and development because scientists haven't fully studied the symbiotic relationships and the intricacies of all the microbes and mechanisms that work amongst this very complex ecosystem. And so coral reefs need to stay around for not only all these reasons, but also for future research and how we can implement this in our future lives. Finally, these are the consequences of what will happen if coral reefs were to be gone or be extinct. Now, first of all, the probably most influential topic or consequence of why coral reefs are disappear is the economic downturn. Nations who depend on tourism and sea exports and also fisheries will be directly affected by the loss of coral reefs because coral reefs themselves, as again, they provide 25% of marine life, their habitat. So they naturally draw in fish and marine life for us to fish. So all these tourism for scuba diving and fisheries or sea exports for Japan, they will all cease to exist because coral reefs play that big of a role. And secondly, the loss of resources. Just like I said, fisheries and families that depend on coral reefs, like coastal families, coastal nations that have families living near the coast, are they highly depend on corals. And if that's taken away from them, all the resources that they have from coral reefs will be gone. Thirdly, the loss of marine life. This is really big because marine life and the ecosystem, the food web, is all dependent on the coral reefs. 25% is a lot. And if any one of those species were to go extinct, a large chain reaction of, especially 25% of marine life, will cause a large chain reaction and a lot of species would start to die off because they really rely on the coral reefs. Finally, the loss of homes and shelters for, again, coastal families, that because coral reefs act as a natural barrier, this will cause them to lose their homes due to flooding and high rising sea levels. So thank you and have a nice day.